Do you want to be a better group leader but aren't sure how or really where to start? Are you going to be a group leader for the first time and want to make sure that you just don't mess up, or worse, mess up any of the women under your leadership? Well, today I'm sharing 4 ways that you can be a better group leader. Welcome to Hold the Fluff, the podcast for Christian women who are done with surface level faith and are ready to grow into spiritual maturity. I'm your host, Mckenzie, aka your long distance mentor and sister in the faith. And around here, we trade fluff for truth, comfort for conviction, and feelings for faithfulness. So grab your coffee and stay a while. Okay, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So last week we talked about 5 leadership types that Christian women should not sit underneath. I went through those with you. We talked about the steps before leaving and then ultimately making the hard decision to leave the group if absolutely necessary. And that video was mainly talking to group members, right? About kind of the leaders that they have over them. But what if you are a group leader? Or what if you're about to be a group leader? Or what if you just want to be a group leader one day, or you are trying to work up kind of the courage to start that process and ask your church about leading a group of your own, and you just want to know, how can I be better at this? Well, today that is what we're talking about. I'm going to walk you through 4 ways that you can be a better group leader. And before we get into that, I do just have a couple things to share with you. The first of all being that I am a tad under the weather. So I just want to apologize for my voice and any stuffiness that is really coming through. I wanted to give recording the podcast a shot, and so I just ask that you bear with me and that you just extend a little bit of grace. I'm going to do my best to get through everything that I have to share with you, but please just overlook kind of a stuffy voice or a more raspy voice or any kind of things that aren't in my typical podcast. I'm just not feeling superb. I'm also going to do my best to keep this one a bit shorter than my other ones because talking actually hurts quite a bit. But I really want to be consistent here on the podcast, and I really want to make sure that I'm sharing helpful things with you that are going to help you, whether that's building a foundation for your faith, living it out day to day, leading a group of Christian women, or mentoring one-on-one. Now, wherever you find yourself among those 4 categories, there is content for you here. Those are the categories I focus on most. And ultimately, one day, ideally, it'd be great if you kind of spanned all 4, if not multiple of those categories. But we all are in different parts of our walk, and we all need different types of help and content. And so this one is going to be geared towards group leaders. And before we get into that, the next thing I want to share is that Luke is the next study that we are going through. We actually started it this week on Monday, so we're only a couple days in at the time that you're seeing this. We have wrapped up James, which was our first online study, and now we are headed to Luke. So it is a completely free online study. You can sign up at the link below and you'll receive weekly chapter guides straight to your email completely for free. But if you would like all of your pages stored in one place that's kind of bound together that you can look back on for years to come, that just sits nicely on your bookshelf, then the LENT Workbook is available for you to purchase, and it is linked below. You can find it on Amazon. And lastly, Lent started yesterday, and if you're still looking for something to take you through your Lent season, then I just want to remind you that my Lent Workbook is available. You can purchase this on Amazon as well. That is also linked in the description. You can click on that to learn more about it. I've talked about it quite a bit more in some other videos, but just to give you a short overview, it will take you from Ash Wednesday up to Holy Saturday, which is the day before Easter. So it covers you for your entire Lent journey. It's also filled with plenty of note space so that you can really keep and store your entire Lent journey, your prayers, your thoughts, your questions, how God moves in your life, what the Holy Spirit prompts, and so on, along with daily pages that really guide every single day for you and give you a scripture and a short prayer, some reflection questions, and more. This is also great for a first-time Lent participant because there are pages that explain what Lent is, why you might want to participate, how you participate, and so on. So both of those will be linked down in the description below. Okay, let's dive in. The first way that you can be a better group leader is by meeting with your women one-on-one. Now, you are either someone who's never been in a group where the leader has done this, and so you think, oh, that does kind of sound like a neat idea, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Or maybe you have been in a group and you've been blessed to have a leader that's actually done this, and maybe you think, well, duh, that's totally normal. My leader already does that. And that's fabulous for you. But what I will tell you is that more often than not, leaders are not doing this. I have been in countless groups and I have spoken to countless women about this topic. And I know that the majority of situations is a leader that does not meet with their women one-on-one. It is more often than not ran in a way where you only come to that weekly meeting. You show up, you talk about whatever study you're in or whatever book you're reading through, and then you go home. And maybe if there's time in that group session, you might discuss prayer requests, right? That would be a really good thing to have in a Christian women's group setting. And so sometimes prayer requests might be texted to like a group text, or they might be shared right in group itself. And then when you leave that group night, let's say Wednesday night, Thursday night, etc., when you leave that group, you go on about your week and you don't really talk to the group. You don't really hear from the leader. Nothing really happens in the group text. And then that following week, you just show up to group again and you sit there and you talk, you share, and then you go home and then you go back the next week. So often that is the case where it is just a this night only type of group and meeting and investment to make. And the group leader kind of leaves it at that and they're only involved in that one setting. But the thing that'll make you a better leader is actually meeting with your women one-on-one. You want to get to know them, okay? This is very important to the environment that you want to create for their comfort level with you, your comfort level with them, to be able to pray for them more specifically, to be able to kind of make them feel welcome and cared for and like somebody is interested in them and invested in them, right? This is going to be a one-on-one type of thing, but you're going to see the fruit of it in your group when those women feel more and more connected to you, more and more relaxed around you, and more like you actually care what's going on in their lives outside of the actual group. And so you want to get to know them. Now, you can do this with individual text messages, right? Maybe you have a group text message, but you want to text these women individually as well. And you don't have to text every single woman every single week, but from time to time, you want to text them and check in and ask them just one-on-one, how are you doing? How are things in life? How can I be praying for you? Is there anything that you need? Is there any questions you have that I can answer? Are you struggling with anything in your walk that I might be able to help you with or point you towards resources for or pray alongside you for, right? Like you really want to take that extra step, that extra initiative to be involved in their lives outside of group because their lives are much more than just that group setting. And when they're coming to group, they're coming for that Christian community, for that element of living life together. They're coming for the promise of what the pastor said that life groups would be when he promoted that they join a life group, when he promoted that they sign up, that they get involved, that that's where they'll find community, that's where they'll walk closely with people, right? Your pastor is making big promises for these group experiences from a stage, and then those people are signing up hoping they get that group experience. And so when you actually take the initiative to get to know them, to learn about their life outside of group and so on, you're making that experience for them far better. And you're actually showing up in the way that that pastor is promoting to them. You're actually showing up as community, as someone that cares for them, as someone that cares for them as a whole and their whole life, not just their answers on a page for the group study, right? That it's more than that. You're showing them they're more than that you care more than that even if they leave the group, you're still someone that they can reach out to, that they can lean on, that they can ask their trusted questions of, and so on. And this comes with building that relationship and building that connection. When you only interact with the women when they come once a week and sit in the group for a very structured setting and then leave, your connection and relationship to them is only going to be so deep, and they're only going to feel so included. They're only going to feel a certain level of belonging. They're not going to feel a deep belonging. And honestly, most of the time, they don't even feel like they belong. And when they leave the group, they don't feel the distance. They don't feel the disconnect. They don't feel anything change in their life. And that is really unfortunate. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to form our groups in a way that there is a difference for them, that your group is different to them in a good way. And so you want to invest in them one-on-one. Now, sessions are often short, right? You may have a fall session and a spring session. And let's say this goes from September to the middle of December. Okay, what is that? Maybe 12 weeks, 15 weeks. It's not a whole lot of time. And let's say you have maybe 10 women in your group, maybe 15 women in your group. Now, you might say, oh, that's perfect. I can just meet with one a week. And maybe that's true, but maybe that's not true. But you can meet with 5 across that whole session, right? And then let's say that the next session you meet with the other 5. And so you're doing texting one-on-one throughout the session and on the breaks. That's very key as well. When you have a group that returns, where those women stay in your group for a little bit, they're in there for multiple sessions, then you want to keep that group interaction and checking in on them over the break. And it's going to look a little bit less, but you still want to make sure that you're maintaining that. And so now in that next session, you're meeting with a couple others one-on-one. And this isn't something that you have to pay for both of you. You can go Dutch and you can go to coffee or breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc., right? Just go grab dessert. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. It doesn't have to be expensive for you. You can even just go meet in a park and sit and talk, or walk a trail at a park, and that's entirely free. So don't think that this has to be a very expensive commitment for a leader, but you want to get together with them outside of the group, face to face, one-on-one, and then be checking in with them one-on-one. And this is going to make you a much better leader when you start to invest in your women like this. The other thing you want to do when you're meeting with them one-on-one and kind of getting to know them is you want to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are. You also want to find out what their expectations for the group are. Every woman is coming to group looking for something a little bit different. There will be some overlaps because there's already some assumptions and expectations that comes with a group. There's obviously things that the pastor has said from stage that they're going to be assuming is true and expecting when they come to group, but they're also expecting slightly different things as well, because they're each in a different phase of their walk with Christ, of their journey, what they need, what they're hoping for, what they'd like to learn, and so on. And when you spend time with them one-on-one, whether that's text or in person, and you meet with them and you ask them questions and you get to know more about them, you're going to be able to find out these things. And my best way to find them out is just to ask. Like, you can ask, like, hey, I'd love to know, what are your expectations of the group? And then hear their feedback, and then make sure that when you get back to your car or you go back home, that you jot that down, that you make a note of that somewhere, so that you can make sure that you're doing your best to try and meet the expectations of those women. Now, you're not going to meet them all, and you're not going to do it perfectly, but you're going to be a better leader when you at least try, when you at least say, okay, how can I make this happen? How can I meet this expectation? What can I do with the group that maybe fulfills 3 of their expectations, right? For 3 different people all at the same time. And that's going to really show that you care as a leader. And of course, you're limited, so don't think that you need to do all of this all at once, or this big over the top thing. What I'm saying can really be done very small, very inexpensive, very low time, right? It doesn't have to take up everything. So make sure you're not hearing what I'm saying and blowing it out of proportion, or exaggerating it, or thinking, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to accomplish that? These are really small things, and they are often in the details of what you're already doing with the group, but they will make you a much better leader when you know this type of information. So here's your action step for point number 1. And I'm going to give you an action step for each of the 4 points. So when it comes to meeting with your women one-on-one, your action step is to start scheduling your one-on-ones. So first, sit down, look at your calendar, look at your life, and look at those time slots that you have available. And maybe it's one slot every single week that's at the same time. Maybe you have a Thursday morning breakfast slot that's wide open. Let's say you have from 9 to 11 a.m. and you don't have anything filling that. And that's a pretty open spot week to week. That's a great spot for you to say, okay, I'm going to ask someone this week to meet me for coffee at 9:30, right? And this can be an hour-long session. This can be 45 minutes. This can be 3 hours if you want. It's up to you. Again, this doesn't have to be an over-the-top thing. This can be done at whatever capacity fits you, your life, your budget, and so on. But I want you to look at your calendar and find a spot, even if it's not a repetitive spot, like every single week the same one's not available. Just find a spot in the next week or within the next 2 weeks and ask one woman in the group if she's available to get together with you. I always like to offer 2 different time slots. I find that really helpful. It gives the other person a choice, but it also doesn't start one of those conversations where it's like, when are you available? And when are you available? And that day doesn't work for me. And oh, these are my available days. Like the chaos of trying to schedule for 2 people can be a lot sometimes when people have very different schedules. So instead of approaching the conversation like, tell me when you're free, I typically will say, okay, I have this day and time and this day and time. I'd love to get together for coffee with you. Do either of these day and times work? And then let that person respond. And they'll either say, no, I'm not available, or yes, this one works for me, right? And then there you go, it's scheduled. So I want you to look at your calendar, find some spots in your calendar, and try to schedule at least your first one-on-one meetup with someone in your group. And then just do it again and again and again. Okay, the second thing that is going to make you a much better group leader is to create a specific group culture and environment. Now, there will be a culture and environment to your group, but what I want to ask you is, will it be on purpose? Will it be what you want it to be? Because this can backfire. If you don't plan this, if you don't design this, if you're not intentional with the culture and environment of your group, guess what? Someone else will. Or multiple people will, because there will be a culture and environment to your group. But is it what you want? Because here's what happens when you're unintentional with this. Your group might become a group where gossip is the popular thing to do. And maybe a few weeks in or a few months in, you look up and say, oh, there's a lot of gossip in my group, and I don't really know how we got here. And I don't want to be a group that gossips, but now it's so out of hand and it's the norm and it's what women expect when they come, that it's going to be a lot harder to work against that, to make change, to shift that, because that's the environment and the culture. That's what's been created. That's what's been accepted. And you don't want to do that. So if you know from the beginning that you don't want a group that allows gossip or is based around gossip or where gossip is accepted, then you go from the start creating a group where gossip is not accepted, right? It gets shut down right away. You ask people not to gossip. You make that a clear boundary on night 1 of your group, and so on. But if you never decide what culture and environment you want your group to be, then you're not going to be able to lay certain types of groundwork from the first meeting or certain types of boundaries. And the women in your group aren't going to respect that groundwork or boundaries because they don't exist. And so what you don't want to do is to just let whatever happens, right? You don't want to say like, oh, I'm just going to go, I'm just going to lead, or whatever happens is one thing, I'll just kind of respond as things come up. No, you want to take initiative and you want to be proactive, not reactive, to what the culture and environment is of your group. So it's very important that you create it, that you choose it, that you set boundaries, that you set expectations, and so on, that you think about this before your group even starts. And if you're already someone that has led a group for a little while, then I want you to think about this before your next group session starts, because at any time you can start somewhat new in that new group session. Now, maybe some of the women are returning women, and so there's a bit of an expectation that they have, a bit of a culture they've come to learn, but you're also likely to have a couple new women in that new session. And just the idea that there's a new session makes it an easy way to kind of bring in new changes, new expectations to kind of share, okay, this is what we're going to do this session, right? And you can start slowly working towards a different type of environment. It's almost like a new year or a new month or a new week, right? Those are all things where it's an easy transition. People are already thinking, how do I want to be different? What's this week going to look like? What are my goals this month, right? And so the start of a new group session, even when there's returning ladies, gives you this feel of like, okay, this is a new session. I'm going to put this into place and we're going to make changes, right? And that's a lot easier than like mid-session changes when people are already in a flow of the environment and culture. So take some time to think about what you want that next session to look like. What do you want to be different? What changes do you want to see? What are you kind of unhappy with that has been allowed so far? And so on. Remember, you're the leader. So take charge, take lead. They will follow your lead. And so you want to make sure that you have an intentional place that you're leading them, that you have an intentional culture and environment that everybody is experiencing, which means when it's changed for the better, everybody benefits from it, even those who may not love the change at first. And so I want to encourage you to be intentional with the group culture and environment that you set. And so here are some things to ask yourself. Do I want a comfortable and feelings-focused environment, or an environment where God and His Word are put first? Do I want an environment where sin is accepted or where accountability is expected? Do I want an environment where leaders are raised up and sent out, or where everyone can stay as long as they'd like? Do I expect everyone to pray, or will I always be the one to pray? Or maybe I just ask people ahead of time to pray instead of calling on them in group. Or maybe I have a rotation of prayer and everyone has a turn. You really want to make these types of decisions. You also want to ask, do I want a group that does life together or just a group that meets weekly and nothing more? Because if it's just weekly and nothing more, there's going to be limitations to your group, to the group relationships, to the bonds formed, to the vulnerability of what's shared in the group, how the women trust each other, and so on. And on the flip side, if you want a group that does life together, then that means you have to put in the work to create an environment where they do life together, where life things are shared, where you guys have outings outside of groups that you can do life together and build relationships and get to know one another outside of group and so on. And so both things come with an understanding of what that's going to look like, what that requires from you, what you're going to be asking of the group members, and so on. Do I want a group with cliques or where cliques are not accepted? How will I handle issues? What will I ask of the women in the group when there is an issue? And so on. And so by no means is this an exhaustive list of questions, but it's just some questions to show you what you want to start asking yourself, right? And anything that you decide, okay, I want it to look like this, you want to ask yourself, what is the opposite of that? When you know that I want it to be a group that doesn't gossip, what's the opposite? A group that gossips, right? A group where gossip is accepted, a group where I say nothing when people gossip. And so you need to know what you want and what to avoid in order to keep what you want, in order to go in that direction, in order to be intentional with that environment. And then you also need to decide, okay, if I don't want a group that gossips and gossip comes up, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? How am I going to handle that to make sure that the group environment I'm setting is one where gossip is not accepted? Okay, so that is why I gave you kind of both sides of each question that I asked. Do I want a comfortable and feelings-focused environment? And if I do, what does that look like? What does that mean I'm accepting, allowing, comforting, enabling, and so on? Or do I want an environment where God and His Word are put first? How do I do that? What do I say? How do I make that very evident that that's the type of group this is, and so on. Okay, so you as the group leader want to be responsible for creating the group culture and environment and making sure that you have a specific one in mind and that you're doing what it takes to maintain it, and that you have boundaries and expectations in place that you're asking those group members to respect, to participate in, to partner with you to create that group culture by, respecting those boundaries and expectations, and so on. So here's your action step for creating a specific group culture and environment. I want you to take some time and write out what you want your group culture to be and what you don't want it to be. Again, you want to focus on both. And then once you have that listed out, you can then say, okay, how do I actually do that? What does this look like? What are phrases that I need to say? What are things I need to cover on night one to make sure that everybody is on the same page and that we all know what the group is going to look like? We all know what the expectations are. We know what the boundaries are. We know what won't be allowed, what won't be tolerated, and so on, right? Some groups actually end up signing a bit of a contract, and I'm not saying that you need to do that or that you need to create one of those, but that is kind of an option, right? The same way you might join a group and sign something that says everything in the group will stay confidential. In the same way that you could kind of create a little contract for what you want your group culture to be, and then you have the women sign that. And it's not that you're going to hold it over their heads or that it's some legal binding contract, anything crazy like that, but it just gives them that extra step of commitment, right? That extra step of buy-in, that extra acknowledgement to the things that you said, that you're expecting, that you want the culture to be, and so on. And so that part, the contract part, is not a part of the action step. Actually, I just kind of threw that in there because it popped in my mind that does sometimes occur, and that could be an option for you if you wanted kind of to make that, same page from night one just very clear and understanding. And maybe you put together something that they don't even need to sign. It's just something that you print out and give to everybody, right? Like the group rules or the group expectations and so on. And so that is not actually a part of the action step. That was just kind of a bonus. But the actual action step is to just write out what you want your group culture to be and not to be. And then what does that require from you? What does that look like to actually create, to maintain, to grow and develop, and so on. Okay, going on to the third thing that will make you a better group leader, and that is to be the example. And this may be another one of those duh Mckenzie moments because being the example as a leader seems pretty obvious, but I just want to remind you that if it's on my list, then I have spent years not seeing it be the obvious. I've actually, seen a lot of leaders put off the responsibility of being the example. A lot of times say things like, I'm just the facilitator. I'm just like all of you. This is everybody's group. And absolutely, completely take off the role of leader and example and responsibility and look to me and follow me. They just take it all off from day one. Now, they can't entirely take it off because at the end of the day, they're still the leader, and that is going to mean the group members look to them a certain way. But for them, for their mind, they have taken that off. They have stepped down from the leadership role, even though they're technically the leader. And so when I say be the example, here's some of the things that I mean. I want you to actually show them what the Christian life looks like. So often, women are joining these types of groups, whether it's life groups or women's ministry, Bible studies, and so on. They're joining them wanting to know how to live the Christian life. They're joining them hoping that people teach them something, hoping that they see other women living this out and that they can follow in that example, that they can live it out too, that they can learn something here and that they can grow, right? When a pastor promotes life groups from a stage, they tell them this is where you get in community. This is where you live life together. This is where you find family and friends and so on, and people that you might know for the rest of your life, right? It's very highly spoken about, right? And so women sign up and they say, okay, this is where I'm going to learn this. This is where we're going to walk closely. This is where I'm going to see examples. This is where I'm going to be taught what the Christian life looks like. And when you're the leader, you're the number one person that's being looked to get those answers from. You're the number one person that someone's thinking, okay, this is a woman who I can follow. This is a woman that likely, right, it's highly assumed that the church has approved this leader. Now, that is not often the case. Sometimes the church leadership has no idea who is leading groups within their church, which is a whole other topic. But the group member doesn't know that. The group member is going to say, okay, someone's approved her. Somebody's allowed her to lead people, which means she's a godly woman. She's at least living rightly. She's doing the right things. She's someone that I can look to, someone that I can follow. And so that is the position that you're in when you're the group leader. And so I want you to not take that lightly. And I want you to actually show them what the Christian life looks like. Don't say that you're not the leader. Don't answer last, right? This may not look like answering first for every single question, but I always think it's best for the leader to set the tone, for the leader to kind of forge the path and make a way, for the leader to be vulnerable first so that the group members can be vulnerable back. And so I think that every week, every session, the leader should start with answering first on the first question, and maybe even the first and second question, because that really puts the leader in a place of humility, in a place of servanthood, in a place of let me go first, in a place of, hey, come and follow me. I'll take the first step and then you take the next step, right? It really is setting the tone, and that's on the responsibility of the leader. So don't show up, ask the question, and then sit and wait for somebody to answer. Don't do that. That very first question, and maybe first and second question, ask it and then you answer first. You get that conversation going. You start with the vulnerability. You share your answers and then let them respond after you, right? So you don't have to do this with every single question. You can definitely, answer after somebody else or give someone else a chance to answer first, or maybe answer in a structured way that goes around the room and so on. But whatever you do, don't answer last, and don't start the group that way. Always start with answering first and setting the tone as the leader. Another way that you can set a good example as a leader is don't come to group unprepared. Now, if you're going through an actual study of some kind where there's a workbook and answers to fill in or something to have worked on throughout the week, some kind of homework, do not come to group without all or the majority of your homework done. Now, there may be a one-off case where your life that week was just insane and out of control and you could not get to your homework. That's understandable. You're a person, you're living life, go to group, lead your women, even if you have nothing done. Okay, but don't let that be the normal. Let that be the exception. Let that be the rarity. Let that be like, whoa, like something really crazy happened this week, because she's always prepared. She always comes ready, right? You're the leader and you're going to be leading the questions, leading the discussion, leading the answers, responding to other people's answers when they come ready, right? You're going to be responding. So if you haven't done your homework, you're not going to know what they're answering. You're not going to be ready. You're not going to know what your answer is. You're not going to know maybe even what they're talking about. And that's not good when it comes to the role of leader. That's not the type of example that you want to set. So more often than not, try to have all of your homework done and be prepared to lead. Come prepared, come ready, come understanding the responsibility and the role that you have. But if you can't come fully done with your homework, try to at least have 80% of it done, because again, you're the leader. What kind of example do you want to set? And because you're the leader, you set the tone. So when you come week after week with your homework unfinished and you're not ready for the discussion, you're not ready to participate in group, how do you think the women are going to respond to that? They're going to start coming without their homework done and coming unprepared, or not coming at all because they're not prepared, because they didn't do their homework. And so when you set the tone and they follow, then you want to make sure that you're setting a tone, that you're setting an example of like, I always have my homework done. And then the women that come will know, okay, she always has her homework done. I want to have my homework done. I know that even if it's just her and I, we're going to be able to talk about it because she always has her homework done. She's always prepared. She's always ready. And so I'm going to come even a little bit ready because I know she's always ready. Like, what is the tone that you want to set? What is the expectation you want to set? Again, what is that environment that you want to set? You want to set an environment where the leader, you, are ready for the group, that you're ready to lead those women. And part of that comes down to being prepared, to coming to group prepared. And don't put off being the example, okay? You want to live the part and be honest and be vulnerable. Make sure that you know the position that you have in these women's lives, okay? And the way that they're looking up to you. And that does not mean that you need to be perfect or that you can't have anything in life going on. That doesn't mean that you can't be vulnerable and honest and ask for prayer. You can do all of that, but you are still the leader. So don't put off being the example. Be the example by being vulnerable, by being honest, by asking for prayer, by sharing what's going on in your life when appropriate, right? And so you can take that first step and they can follow that example. Another thing I want you to think about when it comes to being the example is I want you to think back to when you were a group member. Before you were a leader, what did you expect, right? What were you hoping for? What were your expectations? What did you like about your leaders? What did you not like about your leaders? What do you wish your leaders did more of, or maybe taught you more of, or elaborated more on? What did you wish your leaders did less of? Remember, we always want to look at both sides of it. So what did you like about your leaders? What did you not like about your leaders? What do you think they did well? What do you think they didn't do well? And so on. And I want you to think back to when you were a group member and you signed up for a group and you were hopeful for a group and you were expecting something specific. Did you get what you were expecting, what you hoped for, or did it fall short? Did you wish there was something else to that group? And then make sure that you use your experiences, your first-hand experiences as a group member to help make you a better leader and to give other ladies, in this case, the ladies in your group, what you didn't have that you wish you had as a group member in any of the groups that you were a part of, right? That's going to be a really good exercise to help you be a better group leader when you look back at what you yourself wanted, and then you can kind of add that into your group. And it's not going to necessarily be that what you hoped for, everyone in your group hoped for. But between you looking back on your own experiences and then you doing number one that we talked about, which was meeting with your women one-on-one and getting to know them, getting to learn what their expectations are, and so on, when you can understand both of those things, then you can take all of that knowledge, start to apply it, start to take action on it, and you're going to be a phenomenal leader that creates something really, really special within your group. So the action step for number 3, which is to be the example, right? And all the different ways that we talked about, because that looks like a lot of different things. We want to be the example to be a better leader. I want you to take 30 minutes and write down your answers to those questions that I mentioned about your own experiences. And you can start with the questions I mentioned and then think of your own questions and see what you can answer. And always think of both sides, of the good and the bad, the pros and the cons to any question that you're answering, because when you can look at both sides of the coin, you can take away a lot more data that's going to help you and give you good insight as you start to improve your leadership little by little, right? These are all kind of like baby steps. You're not going to be able to do all of this all at once, all of these changes, but you can do one at a time, and then you can do another, and then you can do another, and you can continue to improve your leadership skills and become a better and better leader. And so even though we're talking about 4 things in this episode, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not all that it takes to be a good leader, but these 4 things will make you a better leader, and you will do them slowly. So keep that in mind as well. But take 30 minutes, write down those answers to your firsthand experience, and see what kind of insight that brings for you. All right, the fourth thing we're going to talk about for being a better group leader is to focus on the woman as a whole, right? You have women in your group, in your women's ministry group, in your women's life group, and so on. You are a leader, a group leader of Christian women. And so I want you to focus on the woman as a whole, on the Christian, not just the wife and mom aspect, which gets so heavily focused on. A lot of the studies that are done, a lot of the books that are done, a lot of the talking that is done is around being a wife and a mom. And that's great, but that's not all that these women are. It's too easy and it's not well-rounded, because the truth is that the majority of people in your group, unless this is like a college specific women's group, but if it's a typical women's ministry group with a wide range of ages, then you're going to end up with a majority of like wives and moms to some degree or some blend of. And so it often ends up being the easy thing to talk about, right? Because most moms especially will talk about their kids forever, and they're in the trenches, and raising kids is hard, and that might be the forefront of their mind. But it's just too easy, and women's ministry really tends to settle here. And I want you to not settle here. I want you to view the woman outside of being a wife and mom. I want you to view her as a whole Christian, and as a Christian first, right? When we are Christians, we want to look at the Bible as the standard of our life. We want a foundation, and we want our faith to be the foundation that we take into everything else in our life, no matter what the role it is, whether it's being a wife, being a mom, going to work, being a friend, being a sister, and so on. That foundation of faith, who we are as a Christian, how we view God, how we view Jesus, and all of that is the first foundation. That is the first layer and who we are before we go to all of those roles. And it's what we take into all of those roles. So I really want you to look past the wife and mom aspect and think, how can I help disciple and develop the Christian woman as a whole that sits in my group? And so here are a couple things that I want you to focus on when you're thinking about, okay, well, how do I do that? What do I talk about, right? Because the truth is that before they're a wife and a mom, they're a Christian first. And they need to take their Christianity into every aspect of their life, not just those two aspects that are so heavily focused on and talked about. And I do understand this to a degree. In Titus 2, you do see where it tells us older women train up and teach the younger women how to love their husbands and children, right? And so you do see that mentioned there. So if you're a women's ministry or you're a group that's saying, okay, I want to be the older teaching the younger, I want to do Titus 2 well, I want to make sure that it says women are supposed to pass on this knowledge, then I want to pass that on to her. And so I want to give the benefit of the doubt, because I think that if you're leaning into that and you see those verses, then you are likely to focus heavily on wife and motherhood, right? But above that, you'll see that it talks about teaching sound doctrine. And so first and foremost, we want to be focused on the Christian woman as a whole and make sure that her doctrine is solid, that her theology is solid, that her set of beliefs is solid, and that that's what she's growing in. And then we can also help grow the women in our group as wives and mothers. I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk about those topics. I'm saying that you shouldn't only talk about those topics. So here's a couple other things that you can talk about and that you can teach to your women, pass on to your women, make the focal point of your conversations or your studies and so on, that allows you to help focus on their faith and growing that outside of those specific roles. So you can focus on things like strengths, weaknesses. You can teach them how to hear God's voice, how to study the Bible, how to use external resources, how to pray. You can start teaching them how to lead and even start raising up leaders. Don't let women stay in your group year after year after year. God wants women to step up and lead other women. Like you see in Titus 2, the older need to teach the younger. And not everyone is going to lead, but everyone should be mentoring someone one-on-one. Everyone should be an older teaching a younger. And so some of these leadership skills will be necessary when they go into one-on-one mentoring. But also if God leads them towards the path of group leadership, then they're going to need a place where that skill can grow and develop. So for you being the leader, make sure you're praying to God and asking, point out to me who you'd like me to help raise up, who you'd like me to bring alongside, to train up in leadership, to help build their skills. And maybe that looks like letting them co-lead for one whole session before they go out and start a group of their own, okay? But what you want to be focused on is an environment in your group where it becomes the normal thing to do, to raise up women to lead and to go out and start groups of their own, so that more and more women have groups to be a part of and have these communities to be a part of, and that there's more and more groups available to the members of the church that they're a part of, so that no matter what day and time works for them, that everyone can get plugged in. And that only happens when there's enough leaders. And oftentimes there's never enough leaders for the amount of people that are in the church that should be in a group, that want to be in a group, and just can't find the right day and time that works for them. And there's just not enough being available and offered to them. So you don't want a group where women stay in it for 3, 4, 5 years and it's just so close and tight knit. You want a group where people build relationships like that, but that they also get trained up, raised up to lead, and sent out to start their own groups. And if they go and start their own group, they can stay in your group if you'd like, or you can turn over your group to someone that you raise up and lead, and then you can go and start another group. And you can become what's known as a group planter, and you can go start a group, get it going, and then raise up someone within that group to take over that leader position, and then you go and start another group from scratch, and so on and so on. And then you're kind of planting these groups within your local church. That is an excellent thing to do as well. So those are two kind of options, but you definitely want to be teaching the women in your group how to lead others. You also can teach them how to slow down. You also can teach them apologetics. What does that look like, right? Apologetics is just the defense of the faith. So do they know how to defend the faith? Do they know how to answer those hard questions, right? You can also find out what God is doing in their life, what God is convicting them of, what God is encouraging them with, right? And you can focus on those elements and help encourage them in those, help pray for them in those, help provide them with resources for what they're actually struggling with, again, outside of being a wife and mother. There is so much more to this Christian life than wife and mother, but as I said, it's not that you're not ever going to talk about being a wife and a mom. It's that you're not going to only talk about being a wife and a mom. But when you do focus on being a wife and a mom, make sure that you're teaching them how to love their husbands well, how to pass things on to their kids, how to teach their kids the Bible, how to study the Bible, how to handle the Bible correctly. Make sure you're teaching them how to be their husband's helper. These are often just words tossed out on a Sunday morning or tossed out in kind of the Christian community. They're buzzwords, right? And everyone says, be your husband's helper. But so many women are left asking, how? What does that look like? How do I be my husband's helper? How do I know that I'm doing a good job at that? Where do I start, right? What does the Bible say about that? And so on. And so your role as a leader can be to help them learn how to do those things. You can help them by pointing them to the Bible. You can share your own personal experience with them. You can pass on wisdom from your own personal one-on-one mentor or multiple mentors if you have more than one, right? And you can look into other resources. Like, these answers don't have to just come from you, from your own knowledge, from your own wisdom. You don't have to know everything, but as a leader, you can direct them, guide them, point them to resources. You can learn alongside them and really kind of lead the charge, right? If you're not sure what apologetics is, or you don't know how to answer those hard questions, that's okay. Don't veer away from that. Don't keep your women from learning that. Instead, learn it with them. Learn it alongside them. Dig in together. Bring your questions together. Find those answers together. Figure out what that looks like together, right? Be vulnerable together. You will be a far better better leader for it and because of it. And that will impact your women in huge, huge ways. If you just avoid what maybe you don't know very well, then you're not learning it and they're not learning it. So instead, learn it together, right? Create that kind of environment, create that kind of culture. And so the action step I want you to take here is to choose the first thing that you'll teach or pass on to your group that is not related to being a wife and a mom, and make a plan for what that will look like and what that will include. So I gave you a list of ideas that you can start with. It's definitely not an exhaustive list. There is so much more that you can teach them, that you can pass on to them, so much more that applies directly to your life and what God has done through your life and how God has worked in your life and convicted you of and revealed to you and redeemed you from, right? There's so much that I can't possibly know to say to you right now, but there's definitely so much that you personally have available to you that God has done with your life and through your life that you can pass on to the women that you lead. So whether it's something from my list or something that you thought of on your own that God maybe put on your heart as you're listening to this, I want you to just choose the first thing, right? Not everything, not all things, not the next 5 years of a plan, just the first next thing that you're going to teach them, that you're going to focus on, whether that's one whole group session where you just focus on this one thing and you talk about that, whether it's the theme that goes through the entire fall session or spring session, or however you see fit to teach that to them. I want you to just pick one thing that you're going to teach to them, and then I want you to make a plan for how you're going to teach it, for what you're going to share, for what that's going to look like, for how they can participate in that. What questions do you want them to answer and think about? What action steps do you want them to take to start applying what you're teaching them, and so on. And you want to really think about that ahead of time, because as the leader, like we talked about before, you want to go prepared. And so when you want to teach and pass on something, you want to also go prepared to do that and to do it well and to make it really count and to really stick and to provide your women with everything they need to really take away what you're trying to pass on to them. So don't go in blind. Don't go in with a quick decision. Don't think of it the night of group and then just try and toss it out there. Like, really think about it ahead of time and make a plan for what that will look like and include. Okay, so to recap quickly, let's talk about the 4 ways that you can be a better leader. First, you're going to meet with your women one-on-one. Then you're going to create a specific group culture and environment. Then you're going to be an example, right? A good example, a great example. Like I say at the end of my podcast, imitate Jesus and be a woman worth imitating. That's the kind of example you want to be. You want to be a woman they can imitate because you're imitating Jesus. And so when they imitate you, they are imitating Jesus. When they follow in your footsteps, when they make their life look like yours, when they copy what you do because that's the only example they have, or they've never seen somebody do that like that, right? Maybe they weren't raised in church, raised in the faith. And so maybe you're the first person they see do something or pray out loud or study your Bible and so on. And so they're going to imitate that. They're going to copy that because they're going to say, hey, that's a Christian woman. Hey, that's a woman who's allowed to be in leadership. She must be doing the right thing. And so therefore, you want to actually be a person that's doing the right thing. You want to be a woman worth imitating because you're imitating Jesus, because you're walking rightly, because you're living as the Bible tells you that you should. And so they can easily imitate you. That's the type of woman that you want to be when it comes to that example. And fourth, that you focus on the woman as a whole, right? The whole Christian woman, aside from any specific role, but that you're focusing on her as a Christian woman where Christianity is the standard for her life, the foundation for her life, and that she's going to take that foundation into every other thing that she does in life. And so you really want to focus on that and build that part up and lead the whole Christian woman, not just the woman that has 2 specific roles, right? Okay, if you enjoyed this episode and you're either going to be a group leader for the first time or you're already a group leader, but this episode is really helpful to you and you're really eager to improve your leadership skills and grow and become a better and better leader, then I have a free resource that I want to tell you about, and it is my Group Leaders Manual. It's a getting started guide. It's 19 pages. It goes over what your role as leader is and is not. It includes some pre-group checklists, some pages you can actually use in your checklist, ways to get your ladies more involved, and a few other things. It's completely free. I'll have it linked in the description. You can grab your copy today. It's going to cover additional things than what we talked about here in this episode. So definitely don't think that like, oh, well, I heard the episode, I don't need that at all. It's a free resource, so it can't hurt to grab your copy. And it's going to have things in there that we did not cover in here today, but are also going to help you be a great leader from day one. And when you start to implement these types of things that I'm sharing with you, that I'm walking you through, that is included in the group manual, you're going to be a better leader than most because you're already getting so much more than the majority of leaders in the women's ministry space ever receive. So keep that in mind. Again, I have that linked down below. And lastly, go ahead and comment and tell me, what would you add to this list? What do you think makes a great group leader? And like we mentioned, pros and cons, right? So also tell me what you think makes a bad group leader, right? What have been some of those experiences for you where you've thought, I don't think that was really great leadership? Go ahead and put those down in the comments. What would you add to the list? What makes a great group leader and what makes a not so great group leader, right? Tell me that down below. Thanks for joining me today on Hold the Fluff. If this episode challenged or encouraged you, please share it with another woman who's hungry for more depth and honest conversations like this one. And if you're not already, come and study the Bible with me over on YouTube as well. And if you want more resources for things like growing in your faith, living it out, leading a group, or mentoring others well one-on-one, head to sheimitates.com. Until next time, imitate Jesus and be a woman worth imitating. Bye.